The old woman behind the counter didn't flinch when the gun was pointed at her. She had seen death before, felt its breath on her skin, heard its whispers in the dark. But the man holding the gun? He had no idea what real fear was. He was just desperate. A shaking hand, a nervous breath, a man at his breaking point, believing a gun in his grip could somehow change his fate. But fate? Fate belonged to those who knew how to control it. And tonight, control did not belong to him. Franklin's Wine and Spirits sat on the corner of Marshall and 7th, a small liquor store that most people passed by without a second glance. Dim yellow lights flickered under the cracked sign, and the glass door had a sticker peeling at the edges that read, "No credit, no checks, no excuses." Inside, the air carried the familiar scent of stale beer, old wood, and the faint trace of floor cleaner. The shelves were half-stocked, mostly cheap whiskey, dusty vodka bottles, and beer that had been sitting warm for too long. Behind the counter stood Evelyn Carter, 62 years old. Skin weathered by time, but eyes sharp as ever. Once, she had been Sergeant Evelyn Carter of the 3rd Infantry Division, a name that carried weight. Now, she was just an old woman ringing up bottles for people who barely muttered "thank you" before walking out. She didn't mind. Routine was good. Routine was safe. Tonight was supposed to be just another shift. It was 11:34 p.m. 26 minutes until closing. The place was quiet except for a man in the back, standing in front of the beer fridge, staring at the bottles like he was trying to find meaning in them. Evelyn glanced at the clock. Almost time to count the register, lock up, and go home. Maybe heat up some leftover stew, watch something on TV until sleep took over. Then the door chimed. She barely looked up at first. Just another late-night customer. But then she noticed how he walked in. Too fast. Too rigid. His hood pulled low over his face. Hands buried deep in the front pocket of his sweatshirt. Eyes scanning not the shelves but the exits. Evelyn had seen that look before. Not in convenience stores. Not in bars. But in war zones. She didn't stiffen. Didn't react. Just watched. The man in the back near the beer fridge noticed too. He hesitated, then quietly set down the six-pack and slipped out the side door. Smart man. Now it was just the two of them. The man in the hood stopped a few feet from the counter. His name, though Evelyn wouldn't learn it until later, was Isaac Ford. Mid-30s. Gaunt. Hollow eyes. The look of a man who had been losing for a long time. His hand twitched inside his hoodie pocket. And then, in one clumsy motion, he pulled out the gun. Empty the register. Now. His voice wavered. Evelyn looked at the gun, then at him. A Hi-Point C9. Cheap. Unreliable. Safety off. She didn't flinch. Didn't even blink. This was not the first time someone had pointed a gun at her. But Isaac? Isaac had never done this before. She could see it in his grip too tight. His knuckles white, his fingers locked like he thought squeezing the handle harder would make the weapon more powerful. His stance? Unbalanced. He wasn't a professional. Wasn't trained. And the most dangerous kind of man was a desperate one. I said. Evelyn raised one hand, slow and deliberate. I heard you. Her voice was too calm. Too steady. Isaac wasn't expecting that. His breathing was uneven. His fingers twitched. The barrel of the gun wobbled slightly. He was panicking, trying to convince himself he was in control. But Evelyn knew better. She tilted her head slightly, studying him the way a lion studies prey. The way she had once studied men with rifles hiding behind ruined buildings in places far from here. She saw everything she needed to see. He hadn't fired yet. That meant something. This wasn't a man set on bloodshed. This was a man out of options. Still, a man out of options was the hardest kind to control. Evelyn's hands hovered near the register, slow and deliberate. You're nervous, she said evenly. That's bad for both of us. Isaac's jaw clenched. His eyes darted to the door, then back. Shut up and do what I said. I am. She didn't break eye contact. But you don't want to do this. A bitter laugh escaped his lips. Yeah? What the hell do you know about what I want? More than he thought. She tapped a button on the register, and the old machine let out a soft beep before the cash drawer slid open. Isaac flinched at the noise. His gun jerked up an inch higher. Too jumpy. Too unstable. Evelyn made a note of it. She pulled a few bills from the tray, moving with the kind of patience that told him she wasn't going to fight. That's what he needed to believe. But Evelyn wasn't just stalling. She was watching, calculating. The gun, the angle, the stance, the spacing. 5 feet between them. Close enough for a fast move if she picked the right moment. Not yet. Isaac's gaze flicked to the bills in her hand. All of it. Not just that. Evelyn didn't argue. She reached for more, her movements predictable, non-threatening. Outside, headlights passed, sending a brief flash of light through the glass window. Isaac tensed. Another tell. Flinching at shadows. The kind of reaction a man has when he's been living in survival mode for far too long. His foot shifted. A minor adjustment, but enough for Evelyn to see the shake in his knee. He was scared, and scared men make mistakes. But the problem was, so do cornered ones. Isaac's eyes flickered toward the door again. Something racing through his mind. Debating something. That was bad. Evelyn's heart rate stayed steady. She had faced worse. Survived worse. And the thing about men like Isaac? They weren't built for real violence. They thought they were. But they weren't. The real question was how long until Isaac realized that. Because the second he did, everything was going to change. Isaac's grip on the gun tightened. His breathing was shallow, uneven. Every muscle in his body screamed that he wasn't ready for this. And Evelyn? She was waiting. She had been in enough fights to know that the first to lose control was the first to lose. The seconds stretched. Tension thickened like smoke. Isaac's finger twitched near the trigger. His eyes darted between Evelyn and the open register, the cash resting on the counter. His mind was running, calculating risks, escape routes, outcomes. She had seen that look before. Not on robbers. On soldiers. The ones who weren't sure if they were going to live past the next 5 minutes. She let the silence stretch a little longer, let him sit in it. Then she spoke. You got a plan for after this? Isaac flinched like he hadn't expected her to say anything. His throat bobbed. Shut up. Just give me the money. Evelyn didn't move. Didn't blink. She could tell he wasn't used to handling a gun. Maybe he stole it. Maybe he bought it from some guy in a back alley. Either way, his hands didn't belong around it. And she was about to prove it. Who's waiting for you when you walk out that door? Isaac frowned. What? I asked, who's waiting for you? His jaw tensed. That was the crack. The question he hadn't expected. His grip faltered barely, but enough. Evelyn took a slow step forward. Deliberate. Measured. Controlled. Isaac stiffened. The gun twitched. Stop moving. She stopped. Tilted her head. You ever shot anyone before? Silence. Isaac's lips parted, but no words came out. I have. Her voice was flat. Cold. Not a confession. Not a brag. Just a fact. And I promise you, it's not something you walk away from clean. Isaac swallowed hard. His hands flexed at his sides like he wanted to hide how much they were shaking. Evelyn let him sit in it. Make him feel it. Then she flicked her eyes toward the gun. Safety's off, huh? Isaac hesitated. Then he nodded. Evelyn nodded back. That's good. Isaac frowned. Good? Why the hell is that good? She let out a slow breath like she was thinking it over. Because if you walked in here with it on, it means you never really planned to use it. But you didn't. You took it off. She let that settle. And now you have to decide what happens next. Isaac's Adam's apple bobbed. His fingers twitched again. And then his gun hand lowered an inch. That was all she needed to see. Isaac might have walked in here thinking he had the power. But power wasn't in the gun. It was in the mind of the person holding it. And right now, that person was losing it. Isaac's breath came in short, ragged bursts. His grip on the gun was failing, his arms trembling under the weight of the moment. The illusion of control gone. Evelyn saw it happen. The exact second he realized he wasn't built for this. She had seen it in war. The moment a man's mask slips when he understands he's standing on the edge of something he can't come back from. But cornered men? They were still dangerous. Isaac jerked forward, desperate. Stop talking. His voice cracked. You think you're some kind of tough guy? I will shoot you. Evelyn didn't flinch. Didn't blink. Didn't move. No, you won't. Silence. Isaac blinked. Hesitated. And that split-second flicker of doubt was all she needed. She moved. Not fast. Not aggressive. Just controlled. Her left hand shot up not for the gun, but for his wrist. A sharp, practiced twist. Isaac let out a strangled noise. His grip failed for half a second, that's all it took. Evelyn's right hand clamped over the slide of the pistol, angling it upward toward the ceiling, away from anything human. A struggle. A gasp. Isaac stumbled. Evelyn pivoted, shifting her weight, controlled the fight, controlled the outcome. The gun slipped. Isaac lost it. And Evelyn caught it. Just like that, the tables turned. Isaac staggered backward, hands raised instinctively. He wasn't even trying to fight anymore. His breath came in ragged gasps. His face pale. Evelyn exhaled, steady. No adrenaline high. No shaky hands. This was just another job. She ejected the magazine with a flick of her thumb. The bullet in the chamber clattered onto the counter. The gun was useless now. Isaac's eyes locked onto it. His hands trembled at his sides. Evelyn studied him. Not a killer. Just a man who had run out of road. She slid the empty gun across the counter. That what you wanted? Isaac swallowed. His mouth opened, but no words came out. Evelyn leaned forward, her voice low. You never had control. Isaac blinked. Swallowed. He looked at the gun. Then at her. Then at his own shaking hands. Not just scared now. Ashamed. Evelyn let the silence stretch, let him feel the weight of what he had almost done. Then she spoke. You ever killed a man before? Isaac's eyes snapped up. Startled. His lips parted, but nothing came out. Evelyn didn't need his answer. She already knew. I have. Not bragging. Not confessing. Just a fact. And I can promise you it's not something you ever walk away from clean. Isaac's lip trembled. His fingers flexed like he wanted to hide how much they were shaking. Evelyn leaned against the counter, arms crossed. What was the plan, huh? Walk out of here with a couple $100? Buy yourself a few more days before everything catches up with you. Isaac swallowed hard. I didn't think that far. Evelyn nodded. Yeah, that's the problem. Isaac wiped a sleeve across his face. So what happens now? You calling the cops? Evelyn studied him. She could see it now. The weight. The regret. The fear. Not the kind of fear that makes a man dangerous. The kind that makes him realize he's standing on the edge of a cliff and someone just stopped him from falling. She exhaled sharply, picked up the cash from the counter, shoved it back in the register. Then she slid the gun back toward him. Isaac flinched. What? Evelyn's eyes locked onto his. Cold. Certain. You got a choice. Her voice was low. Firm. Walk out that door and keep going down this road, or turn around and fix whatever the hell put you here in the first place. Isaac stared at the gun like it was something he barely recognized anymore. Then slowly, with trembling hands, he pushed it back across the counter. His voice was barely a whisper. I don't want it. Evelyn nodded. Then go home. Isaac's throat bobbed. He turned, hands still shaking, walked toward the door. When he reached it, he hesitated, looked back. Why are you letting me go? His voice was hoarse. Evelyn exhaled. Because someone once gave me a second chance when I didn't deserve it. She met his eyes. And I don't believe in wasting lessons. Isaac swallowed hard. Then, without another word, he stepped out into the night. Evelyn waited until he was gone. Then she picked up the gun. She'd call it in, tell the cops someone left a weapon at the store. But she wouldn't mention Isaac. Some battles a man had to fight on his own. Life isn't about never making mistakes. It's about what you do after you've made them. Some people go too far, and there's no coming back. But others? They just need a moment. A second chance. A reason to step off the path before it's too late. Maybe Isaac would take that chance. Maybe he wouldn't. But tonight, at least, he walked away with his soul intact. If you enjoyed this story, make sure to subscribe for more gripping tales. One click and you'll never miss the next one.